This is a story about love, but not the kind you see in movies. Stay tuned, this one feels a little too real. The autumn rain fell steadily along the Han River, umbrellas bobbing in the dim street lights. Daniel Park, 34, adjusted his coat collar as he noticed Vanessa Kim standing under a flickering lamppost, one hand over her barely visible baby bump. Her dark hair clung to her face, her expression tense yet exhausted. Daniel hesitated, then stepped closer, opening his umbrella with a soft click. Their fingers brushed for a fleeting moment. Vanessa whispered, "You don't have to help." Daniel smiled faintly, his calm brown eyes reflecting the neon glow of distant cafes. "I know," he said. That quiet night, with the river mist curling around them, a choice was made, one that would quietly change both their lives forever. Weeks later, they sat in a small hammock-style cafe, warm steam curling from mugs of yujacha. Vanessa's voice was quiet but firm. "He left when I told him." Daniel didn't interrupt. Outside, rain streaked the windows, cars splashing on puddles. "I'm 3 months pregnant," she added, eyes fixed on her hands. Daniel asked softly, "Are you okay?" Vanessa blinked in surprise. No one had ever asked that before. A single tear escaped. Daniel hesitated, then gently placed his hand over hers. He didn't offer promises or speeches, he simply stayed seated. In a world that never stops, staying quietly, without judgment, was its own kind of love. In Vanessa's small soul apartment, Daniel painted the nursery walls soft sky blue. A tiny wooden crib sat in the corner, framed by sheer curtains. Vanessa leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes uncertain. "You don't have to do this," she murmured. Daniel continued brushing paint carefully. "I know," he said softly. Each stroke felt like a promise unspoken. Vanessa watched silently. He wasn't a hero, he wasn't saving her. He was simply showing up. And in his steady, ordinary presence, she felt hope stir, fragile, but real. Their quiet acts had become a rhythm that neither wanted to break. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and lilies. Vanessa gripped Daniel's hand tightly, knuckles pale. Machines beeped steadily. Daniel's chest tightened with each contraction. And then, a cry, sharp and alive. Daniel exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The nurse placed the baby in Vanessa's arms, but her eyes sought Daniel's first. "Do you want to hold him?" she asked softly. Hands trembling, Daniel lifted Caleb, tiny fingers curling instinctively around his thumb. Blood didn't make him a father. Commitment did. In the fluorescent glow of the Seoul hospital room, Daniel made a choice that would last forever. The birth certificate rested on a metal tray, official and cold. "Father's name?" the nurse asked politely. Vanessa froze, eyes shifting to Daniel. He leaned forward calmly. "Daniel Park," he said firmly. Ink sealed more than a name, it sealed intention. Later that night, Daniel sat beside Vanessa's hospital bed, Caleb swaddled between them. He traced the tiny fingers. "I may not have given you life, but I'll give you everything else," he whispered. Vanessa exhaled, tears glistening. In that small room, with city lights faintly glowing through the window, love, steady, patient, and real, took its first breath. Winter sunlight filtered softly through the curtains of their Seoul apartment. Daniel Park, now 36, stood in the kitchen wearing a charcoal sweater, his silver watch resting against the counter as he packed Caleb's lunch. Caleb, 6 at the time, sat at the table swinging his legs, gap-toothed smile bright as he showed a superhero drawing. Vanessa Kim, her long black hair loosely tied back, watched quietly from the doorway in a cream cardigan. Daniel crouched to Caleb's height, fixing the collar of his small navy jacket. "Be brave today," he whispered. Caleb nodded proudly. It was in these small rituals, the tying of shoes, the warm rice packed neatly, the steady morning smiles, that love quietly deepened, unnoticed by the world. The rain returned one spring evening when Caleb developed a high fever. Daniel paced the small living room, worry edged across his calm brown eyes. Vanessa sat beside Caleb on the couch, brushing damp hair from his forehead. Daniel rushed out to buy medicine, returning breathless, jacket soaked. He knelt beside the couch, pressing a cool cloth gently to Caleb's skin. "I'm here," he whispered. Hours passed. Daniel never left his side. When Caleb finally murmured "Dad." In his sleep, Daniel froze. Vanessa looked at him, not surprised, not corrected, just quiet. That single word settled into Daniel's chest, heavy and permanent. At a school open house, colorful drawings lined the classroom walls. Daniel scanned them until one stopped him. A crayon family portrait, 3 figures holding hands. Above them, written in careful Korean characters, "My family." Daniel stood silent, eyes lingering on the tallest figure labeled Appa. Caleb ran up excitedly. "That's you," he said proudly. Vanessa stood behind them, her expression unreadable. Daniel knelt and hugged Caleb tightly, his steady composure faltering for a brief second. Love had grown roots through years of repetition, bedtime stories, school walks, scraped knees bandaged carefully. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just constant. One summer evening, Daniel and Vanessa stood on the rooftop of their apartment building overlooking Seoul's glowing skyline. Caleb slept downstairs after insisting Daniel read 2 extra stories. Vanessa leaned against the railing, wind catching her long hair. "You've done more than anyone ever would," she said softly. Daniel shrugged gently. "I just love him." It wasn't complicated to him. The city lights flickered behind them, distant and unaware. Vanessa studied his profile, calm eyes, quiet strength, silver watch reflecting faint light. For a moment, she looked as if she wanted to confess something. But she didn't. And silence can sometimes be louder than truth. On their 8th anniversary, Daniel took Vanessa back to the Han River where they first met. Autumn leaves scattered along the walkway. Caleb, now 8, chased pigeons nearby, laughing. Daniel reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a simple ring. "We've already built a family," he said softly. "Let's make it official." Vanessa's eyes filled instantly. Caleb ran over, confused but smiling. "Are you marrying Appa?" he asked. Daniel laughed quietly. Vanessa nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. She said yes, and as the wind moved gently across the river, none of them noticed the man watching from a distance, his gaze fixed not on Vanessa, but on Caleb. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. Daniel was clearing the dinner table when his phone buzzed. Vanessa was in the kitchen rinsing dishes. Caleb, now 8, sat on the floor drawing superheroes. Unknown number. Daniel almost ignored it. But he opened the message. "We need to talk. The boy you're raising, he's my son." Daniel's fingers went still. The room didn't change. The lighting didn't shift. But something inside him did. He looked up at Caleb, gap-toothed smile, black hair falling over his eyes. Then he looked at Vanessa. She was laughing at something Caleb said. And for the first time in 8 years, Daniel didn't feel steady. The next message came with a photo. A younger Vanessa. Standing beside a tall man. His arm around her waist. The timestamp, 9 years ago. Daniel stared at the man's face. Strong jawline. Sharp eyes. There was something familiar about the child's expression. Something he had never questioned before. "Daniel?" Vanessa's voice pulled him back. He locked the screen quickly. "Nothing." For the first time in their relationship, he lied. And it tasted unfamiliar in his mouth. 3 days later, Daniel saw him outside Caleb's school. The same man from the photo. Leaning against a black car. Watching. Not angry. Not desperate. Just watching. Daniel's posture shifted instinctively, protective, alert. Caleb ran into Daniel's arms laughing. Appa. The man's expression tightened slightly. Their eyes met. No words exchanged. But the message was clear. This wasn't over. And Daniel realized something terrifying. The man wasn't trying to take Vanessa. He was looking at Caleb. That night, Daniel finally asked, "Is there something about Caleb I don't know?" Vanessa froze. Not confused. Not surprised. Frozen. Her silence was louder than any confession. Daniel's voice remained calm. Too calm. Did he come back? Her lips parted, but no words came. 8 years of trust stood between them. And for the first time, it felt fragile. Not broken. But fragile. Vanessa finally spoke. "He left when I was pregnant." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know that part." She swallowed. "He didn't know about Caleb." Silence. Daniel's breathing slowed. "Does he know now?" Another pause. And then, "Yes." The word landed quietly. But it shook everything. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Not angry. Not shouting. Just hurt. 'Cause love can survive many things. But doubt? Doubt is different. And doubt had entered their home. The wedding hall in Seoul glowed softly under crystal chandeliers. White florals lined the aisle. Daniel Park, 36, stood at the front in a tailored black suit, silver watch polished, hands steady but eyes distant. Caleb, 8, wore a tiny suit beside him, smiling proudly. Vanessa, radiant in a minimalist ivory gown, walked down the aisle slowly, her long black hair styled elegantly. Guests smiled, unaware of the quiet storm beneath Daniel's calm expression. The biological father sat in the back row, composed, watching. Daniel's eyes briefly met his, not with anger, but certainty. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. When it was time for vows, Daniel accepted the microphone. His voice was calm. "I love Vanessa." Guests smiled. "I love Caleb." Caleb grinned wider. Daniel paused. "But before I say I do, there's something I need to say." The room quieted. 8 years flashed behind his eyes, fever nights, school drawings, whispered Appa. "I recently learned that Caleb has another biological father." Gasps filled the hall. Vanessa's fingers trembled. Caleb looked confused. Daniel's voice didn't break. 'Cause this wasn't anger speaking. It was love demanding honesty. Daniel knelt in front of Caleb. Softly, gently. "Blood doesn't decide who your father is," he said. Caleb's small hands clutched his sleeve. "I chose you. Every day." Tears filled the room. Daniel stood and faced the guests. "I won't marry today." A ripple of shock. "But not because he isn't mine." He looked at Vanessa. "I won't marry without truth between us." His voice held no cruelty. Only pain. And dignity. The hall emptied slowly. Flowers remained untouched. Vanessa sat alone in her gown, mascara slightly smudged, silent tears falling. Daniel removed his jacket, placing it over Caleb's shoulders. The biological father approached quietly. "I don't want to take him," he said. Daniel studied him carefully. "Then what do you want?" "To know him." Daniel nodded once. "Because love, real love, isn't possessive. It protects." And Daniel would protect Caleb, even if that meant sharing space with truth. Outside, Seoul's night air was cool. Daniel held Caleb's hand as they walked under street lights. "Are you still my dad?" Caleb asked softly. Daniel crouched, meeting his eyes. "Always." No hesitation. No doubt. 'Cause fatherhood had never been about DNA. It had been about showing up. And Daniel had shown up. Every single day. 6 months passed. Vanessa and Daniel didn't rush back together. They rebuilt slowly, through counseling, through conversations that hurt but healed. The biological father visited occasionally. Supervised. Respectful. Caleb grew with 3 adults learning honesty the hard way. One evening, on the same Han River walkway where it all began, Vanessa stood beside Daniel. "No more secrets," she said quietly. Daniel looked at Caleb running ahead, laughing. "No more secrets," he agreed. Love had survived. Not untouched. Not perfect. But real. And real love doesn't explode like fireworks. It endures like the tide. Steady. Patient. Returning even after the storm.